Hey, I've been reading this book here called The Death of a Nation by John A. Starmer. And I'm rereading it, going back to the very first page. And I encountered a quote that inspired me to do this video. Okay, now on the first page, he says that 2 weeks after JFK's hoax assassination, well, I used the word hoax, he didn't, that J. Edgar Hoover gave a speech, and the speech was in New York City, December 14th, 1963. We are at war with communism, and the sooner every red-blooded American realizes this, the safer we will be. Now, it was that phrase, red-blooded American, that caused me to think in a different manner than what most people think. And maybe that's why you watch this channel, because I have some thoughts that don't appear elsewhere. Hey, the death of a nation. Now, I'm not saying he's completely free of always providing perfect and accurate information, and indeed he might be a shill, but nevertheless his books stimulate a lot of thinking. So that takes me to none other than Karl Marx. Now, how did I get from that quotation to Karl Marx? Well, the use of the term red-blooded. Now, red is usually a code word for communism. And it would have been in 1848 that Karl Marx and Frederick Engels will team up and compose the book called The Communist Manifesto. Okay, there it is, 1848. The instruction booklet has been written. Now, there's a wide gap in years in this timeline. You'll see that the next big entry in the timeline is the so-called Russian Revolution in 1917. So you might want to question, why is there such a big gap here? Maybe something happened in the space of 1848 to 1917 that remains hidden to the eye. And I'm going to try to uncover that for you right now. And I'm going to make a strong case for the fact that the first implementation of Marx and Engels' work was in the United States of America. We already had what is called the Hegelian dialectic, that is, thesis, antithesis, or antithesis, producing synthesis. The American Civil War was a simple example of thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. So, in my estimation, the first implementation of the works of Marx and Engels was here in the United States. Very, very simple. If you lived in the North, you were fighting the people in the South. And if you lived in the South, you were fighting the people in the North. It was so simple and so basic. So what emerged out of that? Well, what emerged out of that was a very authoritarian government, whereby the federal government now begins to take rule. And it took rule in the South under the Lieber Code, and it passed, later the legislation is passed, that all born in the United States are citizens, and the fact that you are a citizen, it links you under the federal laws and the federal orders and different things like that. Okay? So, where am I headed? Well, believe it or not, I'm headed to your certificate of title for your car. And there it is. Now I know it's not yours, but it's a common document, and this is from the state of California, and it gives the illusion to anyone that the car is yours. It's an illusion. It's not private property. Okay, notice it says what? Certificate of title. Certificate of title, not the title. Now in the hoax-lie system, all that's in a box is meaningless. And that's why you have these fancy-dancy borders around your certificates of title. Okay? What it means is this is meaningless. So, where is your title? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but I know it's not with you. Okay, state of Connecticut, same thing. They'll tell you this is some kind of a security border thing or something like that. Not really. It's to put anything in a box. And that's why, by the way, in courtrooms, courthouses, it's a jury box. The jury is irrelevant. Well, I hope you're not ready to vacate this video or vacate my channel. Certificate of title. So I don't know all the particulars of exactly when and how everything got to this point, but I do know it's true. Americans believe they own things. And for all practical purposes, most folks will live and die believing that they own the car, believing they own the house. No, they're only permitted to stay there as long as they pay their taxes. What do you mean? Well, let's say you've bought your house completely, the mortgage is paid off, and you don't pay your taxes. How long will it be before you get a visit from the muscle, namely the police, the sheriff, whoever, saying you are now evicted? And you put your whole life savings into it, but you're being evicted? Why? Because you didn't pay taxes? But you paid $200,000. Doesn't matter. You're done. Now how can that be? Because in a sense it was never yours. Same thing with a car, a vehicle. You have the illusion that it's yours. Why? Because basically speaking, there is no private property. and that is communism. However, the entire population truly believes that they own things, whatever it is. When this would be proven to them is when something turns up in the court system and things are removed from them, such as their vehicle or their home. And yes, they have the power to do it. Why? Because the actual title is somewhere else. It's with the big corpse, with the oration, which in this case is probably the state. The state actually owns all the vehicles. And you, as well as me, are issued a certificate of title, thus giving you the illusion that it's yours. And indeed, you can live your whole life believing it is yours until something happens. And a car, a house, whatever can be taken from you. Now I know you say you can fight it. Yeah, you can, and the system will equalize itself as long as you pay the taxes or whatever is due. You will be all right. But notice, it's a certificate of title. And notice how they're all designed the same way, with that goofy border. Now, why are they all designed the same way? This one's from Kansas. See how they're all designed the same way with that goofy border? Why? Because in the hoax-lie system, the border creates a box. And whatever is in the box is null and void. In other words, it's only an illusion. Is there private property in the United States? In the minds of people, yes. And you may be one that would probably want to possibly argue or disagree, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. But I'll tell you this, if you think you own a house, you better pay your taxes, because even if you've paid it off and you don't pay your taxes, you're done. You will get a visit from the muscle men, muscle women. And after a period of time, that home will be taken over by the state. Why? Because the state owns it, ultimately. The state ultimately owns the vehicles. Now, you probably didn't know that, and you might not be real happy because I told you, and you might want to fight it. But back to Marx and Engels, the United States was the first testing ground for the Hegelian dialectic, North versus South, and the first place for the implementation of Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto. Like it or not. The good news of the gospel is that we don't belong to this world. And if you're wise, you'll be laying up your treasures in heaven. Why bother laying them up here on earth? No, I'm not saying to not try your best to have a certificate of title. And I'm not saying to not try your best to get the title or the deed to the home in which you're living. But be aware that it is the devil's world. And indeed, he does own all that's on this earth. And those who are in the know, those who are in the occult system, are aware of things like this. And that is why they can indeed prosper. And yes, the wicked do prosper. The Bible tells you that. But the Bible also tells you, fret not yourself because of the wicked. I'd like to thank you for watching. And please feel free to leave any comments below. And I'll be happy to respond to anything that you list there. Thank you.